The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Let's get going, as we will be joined by John Adams here very shortly of the Knoxville News Sentinel. And there's a lot going on. New uniforms that are kind of new, but nowadays it seems as if people are just okay with the uniforms, and it used to be such a big deal. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. We'll take a strong look at South Carolina, and we'll have some SEC September awards. And should Spencer Rattler just quit? We'll get to that and go on to the NFL, because his offensive line is absolutely horrible. The best coach through their first 100 games. I've got some names that might surprise you. And I'm wondering out loud if perhaps Josh Heupel was the target last year of maybe some other coaches who didn't want him to do so well against South Carolina. So we've got a lot on the program. Caleb Calhoun, how are you, sir? I hope you're doing fantastic.
Oh, I'm doing absolutely tremendous today, Dave. Just so amazing. Like, I can't even describe it.
It's great to hear. By the way, somebody already saying that they absolutely love the blackout uniforms. So they announced that yesterday. What's more important, do you think, to the university with the blackout uniforms? Is it recruiting, or is it making a little bit more cash by selling some different jerseys?
Well, now it's, about 2 years ago, I would have said recruiting. Now it's making a little more cash, because with NIL, you actually have, this is the first time that Moneyball is coming into play for university decisions, Dave. And I've kind of thought about that recently, where you can't put it this way. You're not just going to have $100 million buyouts or whatever Jimbo Fisher gets as a head coach anymore. I think those days are over, honestly.
Oh, that's interesting. I would like to hear John Adams' take on that. So let's go ahead and bring him in. John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. Tennessee was known. John, we've got you slightly to your right. If we can bring you over just a little bit. John, you there you go. John, Tennessee used to be buyout university, and Caleb's saying they're not going to see significant buyouts anymore. What's your initial take? And I hope you're having a fantastic day today.
That really sounded sincere, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, I just don't know if you can change your core mentality like that. Tennessee likes to give money to people who have done a bad job, and I don't know if it can just go away. I mean, what Caleb is saying makes sense, and you can modify your behavior, but I just don't know if you can change your core like that. They want to give money to people.
All right. Well, here we go. We're off and rolling. And with John, we always get into some good topics. And John and I workshopped a couple of things yesterday. And I like the first one a lot. It is today's tough question. It's brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right. Today's tough question sounds kind of funny, but if you think it through, it's not the worst idea. South Carolina fans don't want to hear that. But Spencer Rattler, I believe, is an NFL talent behind a middle school offensive line. So should Spencer Rattler just hang it up? Should he just say, I'm forgoing not only the bowl game, but the rest of the regular season so that he doesn't get hurt before his NFL future begins? Somewhat in jest, but John, what do you think?
Well, I mean, like you said, we've seen that with players opting out of a bowl game. South Carolina's not going to bowl games, so he doesn't have to worry about opting out of that. But I think it would be a really good move on his part, and I think any prospective agent would advise him accordingly. Just start working out with a personal trainer, maybe get a passing coach in there, and get ready for the NFL, where maybe somebody can block for him, because that's not happening now. I'm surprised he's lasted this long after watching North Carolina sack him 9 times. And when has North Carolina been known for a ferocious pass rush? So he survived that game, survived the Georgia game, but you just can't keep doing that. He's very talented, great accuracy, unbelievable accuracy, completing 30 of 39 passes against UNC while being sacked 9 times. Good gosh, it seems like his arm would be worn out from trying to brace his fall.
So you're not even joking. If you were his agent, you would say, this would be the way to go.
Get out of there. I mean, do what South Carolina's other best players did. Leave. Marshawn Lloyd went to Southern Cal, where he's the lead running back now. Jaheim Bell went to Florida State, where he can be on a winning team, maybe a national championship team. Yeah, it's pretty clear what Spencer Rattler should do.
All right, let me get Caleb's take. But first on the message board, we're not far off from that kind of atmosphere in college, Dave. Kids will collect their NIL money now that they're professionals while sitting out the season. As John and I talked about this last night, Caleb, it was somewhat, I think it started jokingly, and then he lays out the argument right there, and I think it makes kind of a lot of sense.
I understand the sentiment, and there are players I would say this for a lot. I actually would have said it more. I'm surprised it didn't happen more pre-NIL. I think NIL, at least you can give players incentives to play more. I'm surprised it didn't happen more back in the day when they weren't getting played. I'll say this, though, with respect to Spencer Rattler specifically. Unless he signs with CAA, which clearly has Mel Kiper on its payroll, because that's the only way that Mel Kiper could have been talking up Will Levis as a top 5 draft pick last year, because anybody with eyes knew he wasn't a top 30 draft pick, and only my Titans are stupid enough to think he was a first 2-round draft pick. Sorry, different side rant right there.
Because I love hearing about the Titans.
I will say that unless he signs with that with that agency, so Mel Kiper can get paid to promote him, to force him into a first-round draft pick, I think he's got to play. And the reason I think he's got to play, John, you know it, I know it, Dave knows it, because we've all seen it from Spencer Rattler at the SEC, pretty significantly at the SEC level now. But I think the national media and national perception of Spencer Rattler is not what ours is. We know how good he is. We know what he's working with. But I think Spencer Rattler's done more for his draft stock just playing the last month than he ever had before, because we see how good he is with no help surrounding him. So I think Spencer has to kind of play his way into the type of draft pick he wants to be on the field right now. Now, if October comes, maybe he's gotten a little more notoriety for how he plays, then yeah, go ahead and sit the season out. I just don't think he's at that level on a national scale yet.
Well, the only thing he hasn't perfected this season is ability to throw while falling down. I haven't seen him do that, and he needs to work on it. Yeah, I can see your point on that. I just think the odds are against him. And what happens, even if he avoids serious injury and keeps playing, you know how it goes. When a quarterback hits that much, he loses flexibility, he develops bad passing habits, and the next thing you know, he's not as highly sought after at the next level. I mean, I think right now he's a first-round draft pick. I don't see how anybody could say otherwise. He's first-round pick. So take your money, or your money to come, and run.
Yeah,
away from that offensive line, like he's already been doing.
Colton says, would an NFL team see that as a red flag? He bails on a team that can't block. And as the retort, Tom says NFL team sees that as very smart. A kid knowing they're possibly going to get seriously hurt because of their team stinking, choosing to sit out and still get paid is a huge indicator of wisdom. It's pretty good.
I like that.
Yeah. I don't know if it's wisdom or not, but we used to say, and Christian McCaffrey was the first to bail on a bowl game, I think. And nowadays, that doesn't hurt you at all, really. Quitting on your team is not a factor.
No. Yeah, I think that's a good point about it. A sign of wisdom. He's wise beyond his years, but Do you really think, if you had to predict, you had money on it, would you bet that Spencer Rattler doesn't miss a game this season?
If I had to bet money on, I'd bet he does miss a game as bad as the offensive line is.
Yeah.
But my question to you guys is, because I can tell you this right now, and I know from some people, based on people I've talked to, I'm very aware that many NFL scouts and GMs do not do the watching of film that they should be doing when they make draft decisions. I'm just going to put that out there. And so, John, I'm just suggesting that, isn't it possible scouts and GMs have not watched as much Spencer Rattler as we have because we're so tied into the SEC?
Probably should be fired then. Probably should be fired then. What is what else can they do but watch video? What Brock Purdy, where was Brock Purdy drafted? What
he
round?
Was Mr. Irrelevant, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's what I thought. He was the last round guy. So I guess the NFL scouts weren't watching a lot of his video either, and he could end up winning a Super Bowl one day.
That's a fair point. All right, so you have you have what we believe is a first round pick in Rattler. Okay, now I'm not trying to rip on Joe Milton here, but how would he do for the Vols? John, let me start with you and then get Caleb your thought. If you could trade quarterbacks like the NFL, like you've got free agency in college football, how would he do for Tennessee? Keeping in mind that right now Caleb Williams is the leader on most of the odds for winning the Heisman. Michael Penix Jr. is second, Quinn Ewers, Bo Nix, Jordan Travis. Where would Spencer Rattler, if he were Tennessee's quarterback from the get in January instead of Joe Milton, where would he be on this list, or would he be on it?
Oh, I think he'd be in the top 5. Go back to the Oklahoma days where he got beat out by a Heisman Trophy quarterback. Maybe Oklahoma had the 2 best quarterbacks in the country. We just didn't realize it at the time. But no, he would be a perfect fit for Josh Heupel's offense. Look what he does. Look what Hendon Hooker did. Really good running instincts. He's not a running quarterback, but he knows when to run and where to run. He really sees the field. He picks up secondary receivers all the time, and he's uncannily accurate. He can evade a rush. Boy, has he proved that. So when you think about project Spencer Rattler in Tennessee's offense, just look back at Hendon Hooker. That's what you would get. You'd see open receivers getting the ball almost every time right there in their hands.
Yeah. Caleb, where would he be on the Heisman list? You actually created the Heisman list. This is on offthehooksports.com. Where would he be in your mind if he were Tennessee's quarterback?
Oh, he'd be top 3. I don't know if he'd be above Cameron Ward or Michael Penix. The Heisman Trophy is in Washington right now. It's one of the 2 Washington quarterbacks that should be in the race to win it. I don't know if you watched that game Saturday, John, with Cameron Ward, but I am so high on him against Oregon State.
Yeah, I've seen him, but I didn't get to watch that game. Caleb Williams is one of college football's all-time best quarterbacks. I don't think anybody's going to beat him out unless he suddenly has to play behind South Carolina's offensive line.
So for the record, today's tough question: should Spencer Rattler just quit college football? We are yay with John. Caleb?
I'm a nay because I don't think he's done enough for his draft stock, and I think most NFL scouts are too stupid to actually know that he's a first-round pick.
You're just scorching the entire NFL.
I think a lot of executives and scouts are way less intelligent than they are paid to be. Put it that way.
All right, so let's go to the age. But first, I want to remind you that today's tough question brought to you by Andy Mason Real Estate. Andy Mason Real Estate, 40 decades of real estate in Knoxville, Tennessee. He's my realtor. He should be yours. Best service, best prices in the biz. Andy Mason Real Estate.com. So I'm going to say no, he shouldn't quit. The college experience is special. And there. I guess. But I understand your point. And then what age?
What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
How in the world has Tennessee gotten to this point in the season by not facing a good throwing football team, and they haven't. This will be by far the best quarterback that they've faced. And how big of a concern is that as Tennessee will face their first competent quarterback in October? John?
Well, I think it's a big concern. Ideally, if you had played a UTSA team at full strength, I think you would have been tested in the secondary. And I think you needed a test going into the rest of the SEC schedule. Frank Harris is a good quarterback, a really good passer. He's proved himself, but we didn't see him in Neyland Stadium last Saturday. But I just thought I guess you could say UTSA's third-string quarterback, Owen McCown, was a good quarterback. He completed 10 straight passes, pretty much carved up UT's secondary, as any competent passer will do, and led the Roadrunners to 2 touchdowns. So I just think in scheduling, even if you need to schedule strategically. There's not always you can't always be sure about this, but if you see a diverse group of offenses, it gives you, to me, a better sampling on how to judge your team and what needs to be changed. Sometimes it's you need to change your lineup. So I just don't think we know, and I'm not sure we'll know after the South Carolina game, because as good as Rattler is, if he's always on the run, he's not going to be able to pick Tennessee's defense apart.
Caleb, it is a different challenge, and it's rare to go through 4 games without facing a great quarterback, but quarterbacks across the SEC are not really good this year. So I'm thinking of the schedule looking ahead. Other than Rattler, what's a very good quarterback that they'll face this year?
I mean, they're going to face a Bobby Petrino offense, for whatever you guys want to think about that with Texas A&M, but that's it for October. The only concern I'd say with Rattler is that, because I agree with John's point, there won't be a lot of protection, but quite honestly, one of the things that I totally whiffed on, Tennessee's edge rushers have just taken the last 2 weeks off. I don't think Tyler Baird I know James Pierce technically racked up a sack against Florida, but I feel like the edge rushers as a whole didn't even get on the plane to go to Gainesville until after they were down 26-7. And that game screamed for them to get like 7 sacks against Graham Mertz. And then they didn't bother showing up last week against a team that didn't have its starting quarterback. Neither of its backups are that mobile, and they don't have a lot of talent. So if Spencer Rattler, if he's going to struggle, it'll be because he's under pressure. But to be under pressure, Tyler Baird and Roman Harrison actually have to show up, maybe put a little effort in. And I haven't seen any effort from them the last 2 weeks.
John, it brings up an interesting conversation, because if we'd have had this conversation 2 weeks ago, I would have said Spencer Rattler's in trouble because the edge rushers are so good. So what's the bigger concern, given what Caleb said, which is absolutely right, and that is that Tennessee's edge rushers haven't been great. We know their defensive backs aren't great. What's the bigger concern heading into a game against Spencer Rattler?
Well, this team is full of concerns, and you certainly can point out the lack of a rush the past 2 games. Nonetheless, I just go back to that secondary. The secondary was bad last year. It's been bad this year. It's bad in every way. It's not just that it can't cover people. It doesn't tackle effectively either. And I tell you what, if South Carolina had Antoine Wells to go along with Xavier Leggett as receivers, even with very little protection, Spencer Rattler would probably light up this defense. I just don't think Tennessee can handle both of those guys. Fortunately for Tennessee, Wells is injured. He was injured in the Georgia game. So, I just think you can look at all kinds of shortcomings for Tennessee right now, but that secondary is the one that's consistently a problem. It has been for more than a year.
Caleb, your thoughts on that? Portions of the program brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. With their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with promo code HOOK. That's right. Hooked, Hooked, unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting and keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. Refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. Caleb, I still believe firmly that the secondary is the bigger concern going against a very good quarterback. As pointed out on the message board, Tyler Barron was active. And I think the James Pierces of the world and those guys will show up. I think that especially last week, UTSA did some things to negate the pass rush. And then against Florida, I thought they did a really good job of negating the pass rush with their approach. So I would think the pass rush would be the lesser of the two concerns heading into this game.
Well, y'all are right. Like, the secondary is the bigger problem. But we know let's just put this out there. We know the secondary is going to be bad. We know that's a weakness. When you have a weakness, you got to expect parts of your strengths to step up. I mean, when Peyton Manning was playing with the Colts back in their heyday, he knew the Colts couldn't score that much. I mean, couldn't stop that many. He knew the Colts couldn't stop the run that well, so he made sure to get a lead. So, yes, the secondary is the bigger problem. I'm indicting the edge rushers more, though, because they're actually capable of being good, like the secondary. And so I think it was – you guys have a point with UTSA to a degree, but, again, UTSA had two immobile quarterbacks back there and was a group of 5 team. It's hard for me to give Florida. There looked like a complete lack of focus and effort when Graham Mertz bounced to the outside. He should not have run for 2 first downs, which he did. That shouldn't happen. Graham Mertz for Wisconsin doing that. So that's nothing but a lack of effort by the edge rushers in that game. And knowing that,
I'm gonna disagree on that a little bit. I don't think it was a lack of effort. I saw a lot of guys unsure against Florida. I think they got out coached schematically, and you guys
were unsure on whether or not to run Graham Mertz down.
Well,
the slowest quarterback they're going to face in the SEC.
I think they were unsure. I saw a lot of guys that were going the wrong direction. I think there were some misdirection things that got them headed the right way. No, I mean, I didn't see it. Sometimes, and John, I think you could speak to this too. Sometimes being in the situations where you're unsure makes it look like an effort issue. I don't know.
Yeah, it does, but kind of like I'm trying to imagine what Caleb is saying, the mental process behind this. If you're rushing a quarterback and you see the quarterback run to the outside, what's going on in the defender's head? Maybe it's, hey, should I go after him and try and run him down? Or maybe somebody else will do it, and maybe I should try and save myself for later in the game.
Or the NFL.
Or the NFL, there you go. So
I certainly don't think
I mean, they don't get to the NFL if they make that decision. So that game screamed for, again, like I said Friday before Florida, I predicted Tennessee would get 7 sacks in the game. I think they got 2. And that game screamed for them to get 7 to 10.
Caleb, are you angry at Tennessee for making your prediction look foolish? That could come into play here. Is the ego involved here?
A little bit, John. A little bit. I'm very, very angry at them for that. But also just in general, again, secondary is just bad. I don't think it's a lack of, although the tackling may be a lack of effort in the secondary, but I don't think they're coached to tackle in the open field, if I'm being honest. I do have a problem with the edge rushers. I don't. I don't think they're I don't think that this secondary is coached to tackle in the open field.
What are they supposed to do when they see a ball carried coming that way?
Duck and cover.
Right toward the end zone. There he goes.
Yeah, it's slightly before Caleb's time, but back in the 80s, they teach you with the whole nuclear Armageddon thing out there with Russia. You're supposed to get underneath your desk. So maybe that's what they're taught to do. Surely not, though, John.
No, that doesn't seem like a reliable defensive theory. I think maybe the message to the team coming out of the gate against South Carolina is, hey, tackling is important. Remember that.
Herald Group Security Solutions, leadership, experience, specialization, and making your children safer, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques, and they make your school safer, your children safer, one school at a time. Herald Group Security Solutions. We've all heard of the tragedies. Go to your school administrator and say, I want Herald Group Security Solutions because of their highly trained security individuals. HeraldGRP.com. Do that because we've heard of the tragedies and we certainly can take care of that. We're going to get into public schools very shortly. How about some September awards? What do you guys think about that? You ready for some September awards?
Well, it's
Love the
your
idea.
show, Jay, so we have to be ready.
4 downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
Four
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, 4 downs. Pardon me, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Enjoy life when you see better. Look at me, no contacts, no glasses, local vision service for LASIK, cataract surgery, and regular eye examination, ccteyes.com. That's ccteyes.com. We'll go ahead and get to it. And Cooper Mays, that is on our YouTube channel. The Vol Report, brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, sets us up for 4 downs, and it is now. What should people do, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
Okie dokie. First down.
Coop here. First down.
What is the biggest September surprise in college football and the SEC? Caleb, I'll begin with you, sir.
Ooh, the biggest September. I mean, college football, it's Colorado and Shedeur Sanders. I know they played horrible last week, but like we started talking about Shedeur Sanders as a Heisman candidate. So I don't really think there's a close second in terms of the biggest September surprise. As far as the SEC, I mean, that's tough because can we do negative surprises?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I love a good negative surprise.
KJ Jefferson being totally irrelevant for Arkansas. I thought he'd be better than he's been.
All right, John, what about you?
Colorado and Dion, or Coach Prime, or whatever you want to call him, definitely got to keep in mind this is the entertainment business, and who's more entertaining? He's a villain in some camps, he's a hero in others. So, yeah, that's been the biggest surprise, and his son is part of that. He's an outstanding quarterback and a legitimate Heisman contender. So that's the biggest surprise. In the SEC, I have to go with Missouri's fan base. I've covered games at Missouri and not an SEC fan base. It's different from Vanderbilt, and there are more people at the stadium. I know Vanderbilt fans, they don't even bother to go. But Missouri fans show up. They just don't seem like an SEC fan base. Bottom line, they're not hostile enough. But when I saw them against Kansas State, and then they charged on the field, I just didn't even think that was possible for Missouri football fans. So I think now Missouri has a legitimate home field advantage, and I didn't think that previously. Also, I have Missouri picked to finish 6th in the SEC East. It's unbeaten right now, and after watching Kansas State, I believe this could be an 8-win team.
I will go with Dion on a national perspective, and I will say my September surprise is that Nick Saban didn't have a better plan for his quarterbacks and was still unsure and had to bounce all over the place. Usually he has conviction, maybe wrong, maybe right, but I'm surprised that's not Saban-like at all, is it, John?
No, it was just kind of like, well, we'll see how this plays out. Maybe one of these guys will get better overnight. No, that's not happening.
Looking
John,
for
don't
a
you think
gamer.
Don't you think Nick Saban overruled Tommy Rees, basically? I feel like Tommy Rees made the quarterback decision to bench Milroe, and then I feel like Saban's like, to my new offensive coordinator, you're stupid, and I made a bad hire, and I'm overruling you, and I'm going to put Jalen Milroe in.
Yeah, I could see Saban calling one of his coordinators stupid, definitely. But I think Nick Saban abhors turnovers. And what Jalen Milroe did in that Texas game, that's unacceptable from Saban's standpoint. Remember, he used to win with game managers at quarterback. He won championships that way. No, that goes right to his core. So now I can see he may not be thrilled with Tommy Rees. I don't see why anybody would be, but I still think he would have made that decision after the Texas game.
All right. What down is next, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. Second down is this: the September star in college football and the SEC. Guys, I'm going to go Dion again for that. And I hate to do that, but it's repetitive. But who's the September star for the SEC? John?
Not sure I have one.
Yeah. The SEC is just down as a whole?
Well, I mean, just look around. I thought Harold Perkins might have been one of the best defensive players in the country last year at LSU. Now they're tinkering around with him. Well, maybe we should play him over here or over there. Or we want him back in coverage. We want him spying on a quarterback. I don't know what they're doing with him. I thought he would be a superstar this year. Let me think about that some more. Can we have a fifth down where I come back and say, "Oh, I'll pick this guy"? I've got a national star though.
Okay, give me a national star. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you my SEC star is Bobby Petrino, because he brought some semblance to Texas A&M in terms of offensively. They did lose to Miami, but I mean, that's a pretty good football team. So 3-1, I thought I would have to go Bobby Petrino. I think A&M should be happy, except for the fact that they want Jimbo Fisher fired and they'd like for them to tank.
And they want him tortured first for all the money he's stolen there. Actually, if I were going to, it's the star of the SEC is Brock Bowers of Georgia. He's just hidden because he's a tight end. But I love watching that guy play. He's just so much fun to watch. So I would say Brock Bowers.
And he's also kind of old news, like Peyton Manning was. We've heard so much about him.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, oh, he broke 3 tackles. Oh, he hurdled the guy. Oh, now he's running the ball on a jet sweep. We've seen that before.
Caleb, September stars, sir.
Going quarterbacks, but I'm going to go like I talked earlier because I'm still so in love with Cameron Ward at Washington State. He's my star on a national scale. I just think he's done an amazing job. People watch him; he's really good. At the SEC level, it's funny because we talked about him in the first segment. I'm going to say Spencer Rattler because we're already talking about him maybe sitting the season. I think that's because he's even though South Carolina's 2-2, he's really improved his draft stock this month of September because he proved at the end of last year wasn't a fluke. Like we're watching him play and we're like, "Oh, that guy's good." Everybody around him's terrible. I mean, that's what we're all seeing.
There you go. Which down is it now, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Maybe we overlapped here. September SEC Player of the Month probably is Brock Bowers. It's hard to top him. Guys, who would you throw out there as a possible competition?
Well, I think Caleb just said it. Spencer Rattler. He's completing over 70% of his passes behind a wretched offensive line. So that speaks all you need to hear. So, yeah.
It's pretty good. Isn't it weird that we're not even talking about like maybe a Will Anderson out there or a great pass rusher or a great something? I mean, we're talking about a tight end and a guy that has certainly made plays but was horrible this time last year. That is odd to me.
Yeah, I would say it is kind of wild. And that's the thing. It's like in a year where the SEC quarterbacks is down, you think you would find somebody. I'm going to go a little bit out on a limb, and I might say Malik Neighbors right now as the star through 4 games. Jaden Daniels still has the best stats of any quarterback in the SEC right now. And I think that has a lot more to do with Malik Neighbors than it does Jaden Daniels. So I'll go Malik Neighbors.
There you go. All right, final down, Coop.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
SEC September Team of the Month is?
This is default.
It's default. Is the SEC it's got to be Georgia still, right? Boring, but Georgia.
I'll go with Missouri. Who has the best non-conference win of any team in the SEC?
By far, Missouri. Yeah.
It's Missouri. I mean, the other team, the good teams, we saw what LSU did against Florida State. It just wilted in the second half. We saw A&M secondary. I mean, it looked like Tennessee secondary against Miami. So yeah, I think it's Missouri. It's unbeaten, and Kentucky's unbeaten too. But we know what
They've had the
Kentucky.
worst schedule of all time.
I mean, how shameless. I mean, they just, I can imagine.
Georgia's not much better.
What? No, you're
Georgia's
right.
not much better.
I can remember. I can imagine someone saying in Kentucky football office, "Say, do you think maybe we should schedule a little better?" And Mark Stoops saying, "No, we're good. Yeah,
We're fine.
Well, no, yeah.
Do you want to play Louisville? No, I'm good.
No, that's not necessary. Why should we make them legitimate? No.
Yeah. What about North Carolina? They're close. No, good. Fine, just fine. Let's skip over that and let's just move forward and play Western Kentucky.
It's an honorary member of the MAC now. Kentucky is.
Well, Maction, 90 seconds. And
By the way, it is Missouri. John's right. The surprise team, the team of the SEC is Missouri. And if you were doing a college football playoff ranking, they'd be number 1 in the SEC right now.
Oh man!
Whoa!
Undefeated with a good win. Georgia has beaten a bunch of plumbers, and Kentucky has beaten a bunch of electricians. So it's
There's nothing wrong with a good trade endeavor, Caleb.
No, I'm a big fan of good plumbers. I've got one, and it's amazing to have a good plumber.
Yeah, 90 seconds, and then the best coaches in their first 100 games. And I've got some surprises for you. 90 seconds with John Adams. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
For Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible before. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
All right, best college football coach through first 100 wins. Guys, and this comes to a topic because of what Kirby Smart did. So his start to his head coaching career, he has the highest winning percentage through 100 games in conference history. He was asked about that accomplishment and said, I guess it's a marker of some sort of first 100. He played it down. I don't know the significance outside of that. But I think it is significant, and I think it's significant for one reason, and that is he rebuilt a program, and not completely rebuilt, but he took a program to the next level. They were getting 10 wins a season under Mark Richt, but John, how significant do you think this accomplishment is compared to, let's say, other guys that made the list with big wins? And a lot of wins in their first 100 compared to Nick Saban, who completely rebuilt an Alabama program. Philip Fulmer is also in the top 5 of those lists, but he took over a program that was in pretty good shape. So what do you make of Kirby Smart being number 1 in his first 100 games? How significant is that?
Well, that's very accurate. He is number 1. He took Alabama's dynasty on head on and beat it. He almost has 3 national championships. He's one miraculous pass from Tua away from 3 national championships. So, yeah, winning back-to-back. And now he's in the running for 3 consecutive national championships, which is unlike anything we've ever seen in the modern era of college football. So, yeah, Kirby Smart, he's Mark Richt did a good job there, but I don't know that he averaged 10 wins a season. I didn't think he averaged that many. He did a nice job, and Georgia's always had pretty good players. But to me, Kirby Smart has turned it into another Alabama, and he surpassed Alabama when Alabama was going full speed ahead. That's impressive.
He passes Nick Saban, but Saban, I thought, took over a program. So Kirby Smart has 85 wins. Nick Saban had 84. I thought, Caleb, that Alabama's program is further down. I mean, they had Jimmy John not making sandwiches, but slinging cocaine in the athletic complex parking lot. He had to get rid of him, and he had to rebuild that roster. I think they were, 7-5 their first year. I actually think that what Nick Saban did was more impressive. John says because you take on Saban, Smart's more impressive. You?
So is this the 84 for Nick Saban? Is that his first 100 games at Alabama, or just his first 100 games in the SEC period?
At Alabama.
Okay. Well, remember this. Saban also had to forfeit 5 games at Alabama his first year because of a stupid textbook scandal that was just the most insane, the dumbest scandal in the history of scandals.
I'm assuming that those aren't counted because the NCAA is stupid.
They are counted against Nick Saban's record. So I think Nick Saban might actually be number 1 in this regard. We'll have to check that. But either way, the debate it's split 50-50. So the question of who's more impressive. Yeah, I'm going Nick Saban because I got to be honest with you. Like Kirby Smart, when he took over at Georgia was in the same situation Tennessee was when Fulmer took over Tennessee in 92, or 93. It was a very good program that hadn't gotten over the hump, but the infrastructure was in place to do well. They just needed a coach to take it to a next level. And also they needed let's just say this up front. They needed to stop caring so much about discipline and integrity. Georgia. That was their problem for 15, 16 years.
Now they're just flying up and down the roads at like 150 miles an hour.
Tripping over potholes and human beings in the process.
Drag racing back and forth to Atlanta and winning championships, baby.
Yeah, so, I mean, Nick Saban took over a program fresh off probation that was in the midst of another scandal where it was having to forfeit a bunch of games. So, I think Kirby Smart, I think Nick Saban's is more impressive than Kirby Smart's only because of what he did. And also, Georgia's an easier job than Alabama, all things equal.
I'm sure the book scandal's not factored in there, but let's go. Okay, so here's what we've got. Here are the top 5, and I want you guys to rank these. Saban has 84. We mentioned Smart has 85. Then after that, Steve Spurrier has 83, along with Philip Fulmer, 83. Bear Bryant has 81. So, John, how would you rank those first 100 games? Not the coaches, but the first 100 games given what they had laid in front of them to get.
First of all, I misunderstood the question. I thought you were talking about first 100 games as a head coach.
Yes. First 100 games as a head coach. Where did I lose you?
So, Nick Saban coached at Michigan State.
No, so it is first 100 games. Excuse me, it's first 100 games at one particular school.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, if you take one school, yeah, Nick Saban's the top. He's tops. I would probably second, I would probably go Bear Bryant. He turns around programs, and wherever he went, he turned the program into a championship contender. Then I would go with, let's see, probably Steve Spurrier, because Florida had never even won an SEC championship in football until he got there, and he dominated the 90s. Then go with Kirby Smart, and who's the other guy?
The other guy, and let me see. The other guy, Fulmer.
I know that.
Out of that group, I would say that Steve Spurrier gets a knock, and we're getting some background noise from somebody. Steve Spurrier gets a slight knock because he has so much in-state talent. And then, so if I had to rank it, John, I'm going to lean on your expertise because you got a couple of years on me and Paul Bear Bryant. But I think that I would probably go Saban first because Alabama was so down. And then I would go next. I would go with Kirby Smart, then Steve Spurrier. And, I think the
wait, in-state talent is held against Spurrier, but not Smart?
Well, I just think that, okay, let me put Spurrier over Smart. Where would you rank him, Caleb? Let me go with you.
I would still have Spurrier third, but I would have had the two Alabama coaches first and second, Bryant and Saban. And I had Bryant a little higher because John could probably speak to this, but Alabama was in worse shape when Bryant took over than they were when Nick Saban took over. They had won 4 games in 3 years, I think, or something. They had 4 wins in 3 years when Bryant took over. It was a bad football team at that moment, and Bryant won a national championship by I think his 4th year. So I got Bryant 1, Saban 2, Spurrier 3. I get your point with in-state talent with Spurrier, Dave, but my pushback is when Spurrier took over, Miami was at its apex as a college football program at that moment. They were defending national champs the year he took over, and they were about to win another one in 2 years. Florida State was basically at its apex under Bobby Bowden. So yes, there was a lot of in-state talent, but Florida State and Miami was getting all that talent. Florida wasn't getting much of it at all. And Florida was on probation that year too. Remember, Spurrier's first team, 1990, Tennessee fans don't want to hear this. They should be SEC champs. They went 6-1. Tennessee went 5-1-1. They got the SEC title because Florida was on probation that year. And Spurrier went 9-2 his first year there when they were on probation. And so I got Spurrier at third because of that.
John, help me with the Paul Bear Bryant. To win 81 through the first 100 games, where was Alabama at that point?
Yeah, it's pretty much like what Caleb said. There was no dynasty in the works at Alabama till Bear Bryant. And Bear Bryant, that was his track record. It wasn't just at Alabama. He flipped Kentucky football. He flipped Texas A&M football. He's kind of forgotten about now. A lot of time has passed. He coached his last game in 82. But the thing about Bear Bryant was he adjusted to the game. He adjusted to all the changes, stayed current. That's why he was so good for so long. So, I covered some of his championship teams. And, it's hard to put anybody ahead of him as a college football coach except Nick Saban because of the championships. It's hard to argue with championships. But those two guys, I think it's significant. Alabama's had two football dynasties. Most schools are fortunate to have one. Why did it have the dynasties? Because it had the coaches, Saban and Bear Bryant.
This I've heard before. Smoky Mountain Red says, I get a vibe that Caleb is a young Mr. Adams. It's actually Fred White has said that as well. So there we go. I don't know if that's a compliment or not for you, Caleb.
I think it's a compliment. Adams is very knowledgeable. John is a very knowledgeable guy.
I think
not my favorite president. Not my favorite president because he did try to ban free speech, but still,
Yeah.
I think maybe the cynicism is where Smoky Mountain Red's getting that from, just slightly. I think you guys are both selling Philip Fulmer short because he was able to do so in a time that Steve Spurrier was ruling the roost. And I think Philip Fulmer is certainly through the first 100 games deserves to be on this list. And I think it's pretty impressive what he did. He did take over a program in good shape, though.
Yeah, Johnny Majors came really. I don't think people realize. If you go back and look at the scores, how close Johnny Majors came to winning a national championship at Tennessee. I really think if Chuck Webb hadn't gotten injured in I guess it was the second game against Pacific in maybe 1990, that team could have won the national. It would have won the national championship. But he took over a program in good shape and he improved it. So he gets credit for that. But look what was going on in the SEC at that time. Not just at Florida. Yeah, Steve Spurrier had a dynasty going at that time. But what was Alabama doing? had Gene Stallings in 92, but they tailed off, and then they started hiring a bunch of guys named Mike, and we know how that worked out. Then you look around, you look at LSU, my gosh, Curly Hallman. Seriously, Curly Hallman. That's it. Georgia. Can't say this with a straight face. Ray Goff. What was Georgia thinking?
I don't know. Drunken Ray Goff, as we refer to him here, because Jeff Coleman said that he showed up to
Mercedes Hamilton.
Was it? Oh, it was Mercedes Hamilton.
He said what? Did he show up?
Ray Goff showed up at his house to recruit him drunk.
I have a friend who does a wonderful Ray Goff impersonation. I need to tell him about Mercedes Hamilton's quote. He will immediately go into Ray Goff mode. He's made a lot of money selling chicken, though.
Ray Goff has sold chicken?
Yeah.
Oh, good to know.
John, I'm one of those who goes on, and this is my red pill moment was covering Butch Jones when I realized the incompetence of most coaches.
John has no idea what red pill moment. Red pill is the matrix where you learn that everything around you in an existential view is actually not real.
Yes, and so my red pill moment with like when I used to trust coaches was Butch Jones, and that's when I changed on a dime. So was Ray Goff the Butch Jones of the 90s? Was he the one who just made basic in-game mistakes all the time? Because that's what I've read and heard.
Yeah, Ray Goff was sort of a slower version of Butch Jones. Butch Jones talked faster. Didn't make any more sense, but he talked faster.
Yep. What other show do you watch where existentialism and the Matrix comes up in one fell swoop? And by the way, Smoky Mountain Red saying John Adams' comparison to Caleb Calhoun is a compliment. I would agree. You both are fantastic. So, John, anything on your docket, and how do we follow your work?
You can read me at knoxnews.com and in the Knoxville News Sentinel. Check out our SEC Unfiltered podcast with Blake Topmeyer and me. We were talking about Spencer Rattler on that podcast, too. Might have to start a Spencer Rattler fan club. But by the time I got it really well organized, he'd be hurt.
You're doing the legwork for the column. And Smoky Mountain Red said, oh, so Lyle didn't actually exist. It was just an extremely bad dream.
I like that.
That's
really random. I don't know if John, you probably weren't even paying attention, but Travis Kelce was in the news because Taylor Swift was at his game on Sunday. And all the Taylor Swift fans were learning about football on Twitter this week. And there was a joke that all these Taylor Swift fans had to learn the basics. But after 2 days of learning about football, would you trust an average Swiftie or an average football coach? A Swiftie is a Taylor Swift fan. Would you trust an average Swiftie or an average football coach to make the right in-game decisions at this point? Who's more likely to make the smarter decision?
I would probably go with the Swifties.
I would
the
too.
Swifties. The Swifties. Great job as always, John. We appreciate it, sir. We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, John. He's John Adams. I'm Dave Hooker of the Knoxville. He's John Adams of the Knoxville News Sentinel. I'm Dave Hooker. He's Caleb Calhoun. Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia updates. Go to sportstreasurestn.com. If you go to facebook.com, sportstreasurestn. Caleb, you have a conspiracy theory that if I were a little bit more by the book, I might quell it when we discussed this yesterday. I might just say that, Caleb, you're crazy. That would never happen. But Caleb has a pretty darn good point. And let's start in how it relates to the Tennessee-South Carolina game last year. Did other coaches perhaps help South Carolina prepare for Tennessee? Now, follow along if you guys are on board, because this is good stuff. Let's start with Dion, and we'll set it up. 30 seconds is all we need. But Deion Sanders and Keyshawn Johnson have a theory, because I'll go ahead and tell you that Keyshawn refers to it as a source. A source is Deion Sanders in this regard. Tell me what happened with Colorado and their beatdown they suffered last week against Oregon and what Keyshawn had to say.
So Keyshawn Johnson, who is now a regular co-host on Undisputed with Skip Bayless, Michael Irvin, and Richard Sherman, said about the Colorado game yesterday that he had a source tell him, and you think the source is Deion, and I would subscribe to that being the likelihood, the mostly likely, that a bunch of other coaches had exchanged Oppo research with Oregon with what they knew about Colorado more than usual. Now, Oppo research is a thing, Dave, in college football, as you know, but you still
I don't know what Oppo research means, real quick.
Opposition research about the opposition. But I would assume, at the college level, oftentimes coaches try to save that for themselves because they want to be the one to cash in on it against any sort of program, whether that be. But apparently, according to Keyshawn, there was a mass wave of Oppo research given to Oregon about Colorado because there's a lot of people upset about the waves Deion is making in college football.
Okay, so here's how this ties into Tennessee. Tennessee last year, I don't think there's any question about it, ran the score up against Missouri. I think that coaches resented that, and it would not surprise me at all. These coaches know each other, guys. A lot of coaches, unlike the Steve Spurriers who loved Florida because of all they did for him and he played there, and the Philip Fulmers who loved Tennessee, a lot of these coaches know each other and they're just taking a check and they're wearing the jersey because or the coach's shirt because that's the one that pays them. So these coaches know each other, and everybody remembers Faxgate as well. So would it surprise me at all if other SEC coaches said, hey, that Josh Heupel guy, he's jumped in front of the line. He's having too much success too quickly, talking about 2022. And he is running up the score on Missouri, and he's making us all look bad. Let's help South Carolina a little bit. Would that surprise me? H-E to the double hockey sticks. No, that would not surprise me at all. I'm not going full bore conspiracy theory on you, but if you call up to Missouri, I guarantee you would get a lot of help. Don't forget about this either. Shane Beamer's dad, longtime coach. So Shane Beamer is as tied in as you could be to the coaching community. Do I think that South Carolina perhaps sent out fielders? Again, conspiracy theory, can't back it up. Last year, yeah, I think they probably did. And I think they probably got more help from other SEC teams because Tennessee was playing so well and people viewed Josh Heupel as jumping to the front of the line, having too much success too early, and perhaps running up the score a la Missouri. That would not surprise me at all, Caleb.
And there's another reason for maybe, I don't know if Shane Beamer had connections, but for those who don't remember, before Shane Beamer got hired at Oklahoma, by the way, I want to just get this out. I don't know if everybody does remember Faxgate. That was in 91. I was 3. There might be some viewers younger than us. So Faxgate was, for those who don't know, it was Steve Spurrier's first ever win at Tennessee. A Tennessee assistant faxed the playbook for Tennessee to one Ron Zook, who was an assistant at Florida at the time. And Florida, it wasn't surprising that they beat Tennessee, but they beat them by a disturbingly large margin given the talent gap in 1991. So that's what people think. So what I would say with Shane Beamer is the interesting thing is, Dave, Shane Beamer spent 3 years at Oklahoma before he got hired at South Carolina. Now, you and I know there is massive animosity between Josh Heupel and Oklahoma. I mean, it's bad, guys. Heupel thinks he was railroaded by Bob Stoops, and he might have been railroaded by Bob Stoops. Let's just be honest. I mean, he thinks he was forced to take the blame for stuff that was not his fault. And I hear that behind the scenes, he has consistently thrown Oklahoma and Bob Stoops under the bus wherever he could. And so, do you think Oklahoma may have given Shane Beamer some stuff? It's possible. Brent Venables.
Oh, I think there's a jumping in front of the line thing that happens with a young coach. I think that Lane Kiffin is a great example of that for a different reason. Lane Kiffin, before the 2009 season, called out Alabama, called out Florida, even called out Pahokie's community as being a dump and called out everybody he could possibly think of. I think coaches probably were more willing to help out Tennessee's opponents because of Lane Kiffin, too. I don't think this is unusual. And on the conspiracy theory, if extraterrestrials have abducted humans and that's a 10, or 1, that guy runs a red light, that's your conspiracy theory. I don't think this is that unbelievable. I think it's pretty believable. Worst scale and analogy ever. Just forget I said that, Caleb. In other words, I think it's quite believable. Do you think it's somewhat believable, very believable, or unbelievably believable?
I think it's very believable, quite somewhat. I think it's very believable. I think one of the ones that stands out to me, Dave, and you say it's because people figured out his offense, but I want to know what you think. So Spurrier won the SEC title every year from 1993 to 1996. And it was during that period that he was just throwing jabs at everybody he faced, right? He was taking shots at every coach. Well, he won one SEC title his last 5 years at Florida. Now, you say it's because people figured out the offense, but don't you think it was partially all the SEC coaches were coming together, exchanging opera research on Florida on a year-to-year basis? And maybe that's what hurt Tennessee was they didn't have the opera research on Florida like other teams would later in the year.
Yeah, I don't know. And I can tell you that Philip Fulmer, because of the way things went down with Johnny Majors, and I don't have a problem with Philip Fulmer being aggressive and going after that job, but I can tell you that he wasn't popular and as popular as others in the coaching community. But I doubt Steve Spurrier was either, because Steve Spurrier was cocky. I don't think you like getting beat by Steve Spurrier and him talking about it to the media after. I don't think Florida State liked being called Free Shoes University. We know all the ones about Tennessee, which is you can't spell citrus without a UT. Peyton Manning, 3-time Citrus Bowl MVP. We know about all those, but there were more to other schools. There's no question about it. And I think for two different reasons, both coaches probably had a little bit of help behind the scenes.
Oh, I'm sure with that. Well, Fulmer just wasn't unpopular in coaching circles. Fulmer with Johnny Majors was unpopular with the media because I know this. I was young, but I know this now. Thinking from a media perspective, Dave, imagine being in it at that time. Johnny Majors was the best interview in the SEC. You could not get a better interview than Johnny Majors. And could you imagine? Yeah, and could you imagine being a media member going from Majors to Fulmer? And I'm not knocking Fulmer on this, just his style was to not give you anything entertaining. And Majors was going to get, like Spurrier, was going to give it to you exactly how he felt. And I think that really hurt Fulmer's popularity with the national media. And I think that lack of popularity, I'm going to say it played a role in the Peyton Manning Heisman race in 97. I do. I think that's why a lot of people didn't like Tennessee nationally, because they didn't like Fulmer. And it's why Florida State was media darlings, because everybody in the media liked Bobby Bowden. You couldn't not like Bobby Bowden if you were in the media, honestly.
Yep. Uni's up next. Do you like the smoky grays more? Do you like the dark mode uniforms that they're going to wear this week? Or are you kind of old school and say, what's wrong with the orange and white? 2 minutes off the Hook Sports.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility, bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hardy as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Objective coverage. Hey, that's new.
If we get caught, we're going to jail.
The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app.
I'm going to need to see some identification.
Back to Dave Hooker.
Okay, so I have a question for you, and it's brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports, and that is, you've got 3 choices, and I want to see it on the message board right now. And you've got old-fashioned, which just means period, end of discussion. It's orange and white like the old school days. Or you've got black uniforms, meaning that you do those at least once a year, but the rest of it is just orange and white. Or you do the smoky grays without the black uniforms and the rest is orange and white, or all the above. Because this used to be a huge, monstrous deal, and now it's not. So on board already, we have a lot of different opinions, and let's start with Travis. I definitely want to see him once a year, twice if on Halloween. Same with Gray, just once. I'm a traditional type of guy. Old-fashioned, says Charles, then the black uniforms. And Smoky Mountain Red said, I love the smoky gray helmet, the silhouette of the Smoky Mountains. It stole my heart. That is pretty cool. And then you had, but I like the blacks as well for the Halloween green from Smoky Red. So Smoky Mountain Red. Here's the bottom line is, a lot of people didn't like the black jerseys because Lane Kiffin just flubbed that all up. And he put together a jersey, and I know there were some traditional fans that walked out of the stadium because they thought it was orange and white only. So Lane Kiffin took the hit for that, and he put middle school jerseys that were put together in like 5 days. This is not that. These look fantastic. You've got Nike involved, and they're really, really tight. The blacks and the grays. So whether or not you're a traditionalist, whether or not you like them, they both look good as far as just from a visual perspective. But Caleb, I'll be honest with you. And I guess I'm going to be old guy in the room. I understand that the black and gray uniforms help you in recruiting, but at the end of the day, Tennessee's orange and white should help you in recruiting. Tennessee's tradition should help you in recruiting. I don't think this whole thing is about recruiting as much as it is just about having different jerseys to sell. I think it's as simple as cash money at the end of the day.
Oh, I'm with you. Look, buzz is not buzz. People, this whole buzz is buzz philosophy. I said this earlier in the year. Remember things that people overrate when hiring?
What's the
philosophy? Idea that people have this philosophy that buzz is buzz and it's good no matter what. I'm like,
okay. So even all publicity is good publicity, even bad publicity.
Yes, and it's a stupid philosophy. It's a dumb philosophy on its face. And but I'm going to disagree with you. I'm an all of the above type of guy. And I'm an all of the above type of guy because it's fun. But the problem is they're doing it the wrong times. They did the smoky gray for Austin P, and they're doing the black jerseys for this weekend for South Carolina. Here's when you should always do it. The smoky grays should be your first home game after fall officially hits, which is September 21st, 23rd, something like that. Because, the concept of the smoky grays is the Smoky Mountain backdrop and just the culture of fall in Knoxville, which, as you know, Dave, fall in Knoxville, it's the prettiest fall in America. It's like the Smoky Mountains, it's the one place where gray overcast kind of looks good. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so fall is beautiful. So I think the first Saturday in fall, your first home game in the fall, you do smoky grays. You do the all blacks for your last home game before Halloween, because black and orange is Halloween, and it fits perfectly. Yeah, it's not going to help you in recruiting. It'll help you sell some extra jerseys, though, and in an age of NIL, you need more money. I mean, you just do. You need more money in an age of NIL, because guess what? Money that used to go to facilities and coaches. I know the schools don't pay it, but I don't care. It's now going to players.
Hey, Travis has a good idea. I want to see an icy white, solid white, head to toe with numbers and logos outlined in orange only. The numbers and logos in solid white. I love that, and like almost a metallic white on the helmet. I'd be good with that. But at the end of the day, what's that?
You can do that on the road.
Yeah, but I mean, like a metallic sort of helmet that, I don't know, it's kind of like more crystal looking than white. I think that would look pretty tight.
Yeah, it would. I actually missed the former all-white uniforms, though, during the former era. Remember the black outline on the numbers? With the orange?
The Stormtroopers, is that the one?
Is that what they called them? Yeah, that's all they ever really wore on the road under former, I feel like, the whole time. And those were awesome. I do one more gimmick. Sorry, I would, and they already did this, but do one smoky gray, one black, and do one all orange. Maybe save all orange for like homecoming with the orange pants. I know it's a little extra, it's a little much, but one where you do all orange. And yeah, now what I'll say is this. You can't really do this because I think they like the black jerseys for when kickoff is at night, and you don't know when kickoff is going to be at night. So because this is a night game, they're deciding, let's go ahead and do these now.
Yeah, pretty good point. But do you hear anybody anymore complaining about alternate jerseys? Because it was a big deal when Lane Kiffin first did it. Partly because they looked like bleep, as was posted on our message board. I'm not going to say that word, but it was that I think it was also Lane Kiffin's brashness. It was a big, huge monster deal when he did that, and fans were absolutely as upset about that game in which they hammered South Carolina with the black jerseys. They were as upset about the black jerseys as they were happy about the win.
So no, I don't think why. And I'm going to say this is a generational thing. And I'm going to attack something about the boomer and the silent generation right now. And I apologize to every member of that generation. I'm not saying this applies to all of you. Many of y'all's generation believes that tradition started when you guys were around, and there was nothing before you guys. So the orange and white, for instance, that people are like, that's tradition. Tennessee's orange and white. Tennessee didn't always have orange and white, right? Their first undefeated.
Their first jerseys were actually
black.
They were black.
Yeah. In 1914, when they went undefeated to win the SIAA, they wore all black. You guys, your generation, to your credit, said, we shouldn't be all traditional. Let's do something nice and add some flair and do something different. That's where something like orange and white comes in. Or that's where something like running through the T comes into play in the 1960s. Or adding Smokey as a mascot. Okay, that was changing tradition, Dave. When Tennessee first ran through the T, that was way after Robert Nealon was coaching. That was nothing but a slap in the face to tradition. But you guys all were for it. So how could you then, when a younger generation wants to do something new, say, well, that's not tradition? You guys act like your changes to tradition are the only things that should be changed, and there should be no new traditions in the future. No, that's not how it should be done. Okay? If you want to say it's all about tradition, then go back to wearing all black jerseys, no running through the T, no power T on the helmet. Let's just throw all that out. It's tradition. Remember, original tradition is none of that stuff. The whole point of tradition was new at one point, guys. So, yeah, I'm going to say that was a generational thing. And to my fellow boomers and silent generation members, the world did not start when you were born.
Wow. This brought out your inner John Adams. Somebody said it probably did. Portions of the program brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sportsbook in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus. Earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED, HOOKED. That's right, unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting and keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that. And refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Travis says mine and Dave's generations was the 80s and 90s. It was 100% orange and white. Heck yeah, it was. And I wouldn't have a problem if they didn't do alternate jerseys. I don't know how much it really helps in recruiting anymore. I mean, Oregon still hasn't gotten the big war daddy defensive tackles to help them win a national championship. Notre Dame's done it. Every team does it now. But did it really help in recruiting? No, it really helped in selling jerseys. That's a fact. Nobody said I'm going to Tennessee because of a dad blame jersey. Come on.
No, but like you said, it helps with money, and money matters. Okay, money helps you in recruiting. So I mean, and by the way, it's funny you said that about Oregon. I listened to Shannon Sharp. He had a great point. I don't mind what Dan Lanning said about Deion Sanders over the weekend. They're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. But that's really funny coming from Oregon when they've been all about clicks for 40 years with their jersey combinations, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. And we'll talk to you 10 a.m. Eastern time each and every Monday through